This is Jeff Leonard at the ripe age of 54 years old at a major Yu-Gi-Oh tournament, and he's playing Exodia, one of the worst decks in Yu-Gi-Oh against tier limits, the undisputed best deck of the game, and yet somehow...
And all 5 pieces have been assembled. The legs, the arms, the head, Exodia obliterate!
This is the story of how one duel cemented Jeff Leonard's place in Yu-Gi-Oh history. Who exactly is Jeff Leonard? Well, even with him being twice the age of the average duelist, he's one of the most beloved players in the entire community. His story began like countless dads, wanting to spend more time with his kid, but Jeff went above and beyond. He didn't want to just play with his son, he wanted to beat him. The problem? His son was playing fast and complicated decks, where a single turn could snowball into a cascade of moves that never seemed to end, and Jeff wasn't able to keep up. So instead, he went with the exact opposite approach, stun decks. These decks were designed to shut everything down and stop the opponent from even getting their combos off the ground. The stun-based playstyle was the complete antithesis to combo decks, and that was the playstyle that Jeff would gravitate towards. But Jeff wasn't just a feel-good story, he had the skill to back it up. With multiple tournament tops over the years, within the community he became known as the wholesome old guy everyone loved, and videos featuring him could pull over 100,000 views. He wasn't loud or brash, he was the perfect character of a dad, wearing a cheerful smile on his face as he played Yu-Gi-Oh, playing at his own pace. His age made him stand out, sure, but it was his good nature that made him so beloved. Jeff had a reputation as one of the most nicest players in the scene, and everyone welcomed him into the community as one of their own. But at the same time that Jeff was making his way around in the community, known as the wholesome, lovable dad, another story was unfolding, with the rise of one of Yu-Gi-Oh's most hated cards, a story Jeff would be tied to in an unexpected way.
Mystic Mine!
Mystic Mine!
Mystic Mine.
Mystic Mine!
Mystic Mine.
Mystic Mine!
Mystic Mine, a card so notorious that the mere mention of it could send a shiver through any duelist. It was universally hated because of how brutally effective it was at stunning your opponent. Mystic Mine terrorized the player base, where if you ever came across it in a duel, you knew you were in for a rough time. Mystic Mine is a field spell with one simple effect. If your opponent controls more monsters than you, they can't activate monster effects or declare an attack. And if you control more, the same also applies to you. And if both players have the same number of monsters, Mystic Mine destroys itself. On paper, it might sound like a balanced card, but in practice, it was anything but.
I hope on the very first ban list after this set's release, that card goes to like 0.
The card fell into a category known as floodgates, cards that stop entire mechanics of the game. Floodgates are generally disliked, as they are cards that prevent players from making certain actions, such as Imperial Order or Vanity's Emptiness, which prevent special summoning or activating spells. Imagine your opponent plays Mystic Mine, and then suddenly half of the cards in your deck are worthless, and then removing it? Easier said than done. It's like being told to cut down a tree after somebody has taken away your axe. This card was frustrating to play against, as it shut off monster effects, which left many decks unable to even function. Now sure, you also had 2 ways to remove it, through spell destruction effects or by controlling an equal number of monsters your opponent controls, but neither were reliable. At this point in Yu-Gi-Oh, power creep had advanced so far that spells and traps dedicated to spell and trap removal were relegated instead to inbuilt archetype monster effects, which Mystic Mine completely shut down. Relying on its inbuilt destruction effect didn't work either. If your opponent ever thought the coast was clear with no Mystic Mine on board, cards like Metaverse or Demise of Land could play Mystic Mine during the opponent's turn, acting not only as a form of disruption, but also leaving your opponent with at least 1 monster on the board, and once a monster was stuck, it was nearly impossible to remove it without the very effect Mystic Mine disabled. This card created a strange gameplay state, where if the opponent ever summoned a single monster, they were locked out of playing until they drew an answer, and if they held back and waited, they couldn't advance their strategy. To put in perspective of how broken it was, for a feature match at a YCS, where the only actions were draw, then pass for 10 turns. It was a miserable experience for everyone involved, for the opponent, spectators, and honestly probably even the person piloting the deck.
Let's see what we're playing against.
Safe to say, Mystic Mine was despised by almost every corner of the community. It created 2 groups of players, the people who played it and the people who didn't. And if you're in that first group, then you're public enemy number 1. One playstyle that spawned with the rise of Mystic Mine was Mystic Mine Burn. Since Mine stalled opponent, it synergized nicely with burn decks, which relied on dealing damage through effects rather than battle. Burn decks were also known for being uninteractive, and combining them with Mystic Mine created the perfect recipe for being the most hated strategy in the game. Well, what would the most toxic deck look like? The most popular build that came from this era was the PPG top 16 deck list that would rely on shutting down your opponent with Mystic Mine, and then winning the game through the ticking time bombs of Wave Motion Cannon, which dealt 1000 damage for every turn it stayed on the field before being sent to the grave. Or Final Countdown, a card which let you win a game after 20 turns had passed. And when you looked at the specifics of the deck list itself, it looked like it was engineered purely to frustrate. It ran 15 cards which let you get faster access to Mystic Mine, and once it was online, removing it was a nightmare. Thanks to protection cards like Prohibition, Field Barrier or Solemn Judgment, and one of the nastiest tech cards, Goddess's Skulled Oracle, let you prevent your opponent from even drawing any outs. You'd think the most toxic player imaginable could have built this deck, but the truth, it was none other than Jeff Leonard, who placed top 16 in a PPG tournament with this very build. Despite playing one of the most degenerate decks ever built, everyone gave Jeff the pass. It probably made him even more likable. The most wholesome person in the entire community was playing one of the most hated decks in the history of Yu-Gi-Oh! It had a very ironic contrast that everyone seemed to find funny. It even became a running joke that Jeff playing Mystic Mine against his own son was another form of child abuse. Jeff wasn't even a pushover who's carried by Mystic Mine. He clearly had the skill to back it up, considering his tops at PPG or the first place wins at numerous COVID era tournaments. For a while, Jeff was in his element, as Mystic Mine was meta, playing the same game of Yu-Gi-Oh! That he loved, always with a smile on his face, until December 1st, 2022.
Mystic Mine. Mystic Mine. Mystic Mine. Mystic Mine is on there! Mystic Mine is banned!
On that day, the new ban list dropped, and Mystic Mine was wiped off the game, and with it, every deck that relied on it, leaving Jeff without his weapon of choice. To make matters worse, the meta had completely shifted. With the introduction of tier limits, a deck unlike anything before. Not only could it string together absurdly long combos on its own turn, it was known as a turn 0 deck, as it could combo not just during their turn, but during yours. Tier limits were the start of a new era of power creep, a deck so strong that even 3 years later, they're still unmatched. So the era of Mystic Mine had come to an end, with Stun taking a backseat to the all-powerful tier elements. But Jeff kept competing, because for him, this was far from the end of the story. Enter Exodia the Forbidden One. Jeff always had an affinity for unconventional decks, often choosing to play first turn kill decks. But with this change in era, his next pick was just as strange, as at YCS Indianapolis 2023, the deck he played was
Exodia! Obliterate!
Exodia was a very odd choice for a high-level tournament, especially if you wanted to do well. The pieces of Exodia were a relic of the game, where card design was more of an afterthought. It was gimmicky, inconsistent, and outdated. In case you didn't know what Exodia does, Exodia's effect lets you win a duel when you have all 5 pieces in your hand. To even play them, you're forced to run 5 dead cards that do nothing in a duel. Draw 1 in your opening hand, you're effectively playing with 1 less card, while your opponent starts with 5. Building around Exodia means that your entire deck must be dedicated to draw cards so you can dig for those pieces, all while praying that you don't break by drawing too many pieces early. And even if you do manage to set it up, modern hand traps like Ash Blossom can stop you cold. That's why, for the most part, Exodia decks never saw any serious play at the top level, and yet Jeff dared to try. Jeff wasn't worried about topping the event with his deck. Winning wasn't the goal, he was there for something far simpler, and maybe something we forget too often in competitive Yu-Gi-Oh! To have fun.
What was your goal for that YCS?
This deck is really not for winning tournaments. It's basically to have fun.
Armed with the deck list that his son had helped him build, Jeff set off ready to duel in the tournament. But this wasn't your typical Exodia build. It was something different, something no one had seen before. So how did Jeff's Exodia deck work? Just like Jeff, his variant of an Exodia deck was just as unusual and memorable as he was. Most Exodia builds rely on loading a deck with draw cards and randomly hoping that you'd get all 5 pieces. Instead of relying on luck with the draws you got, his deck was built to search every piece directly. This key distinction was pretty important. As long as the combo got started, the opponent had no way to stop it. Victory was guaranteed. The combo was a little too intricate to break down step by step, but here's the abridged version. The deck revolved around 4 key cards: Isolde, Blue Dragon Summoner, Selene, and Time Star Magician. As long as you had any 2 warrior monsters on the field, you could special summon Isolde, which served as the main entry point to the combo. Time Star Magician fetched ahead of Exodia while also sending Blue Dragon Summoner to the grave. From there, Selene becomes the focus point of the combo, allowing you to repeatedly summon Blue Dragon Summoner over and over. And each time Summoner hit the grave, you could search another limb of Exodia one by one. With new ways to summon a copy of Selene from the extra deck, the deck could piece Exodia together surprisingly easily. It also wasn't like the combo was hard to pull off. There was plenty of 1 card or even 2 card combos to get to it. Biggest problem was how easy it was to disrupt the combo, either with hand traps like Ash Blossom or Drone Lockbird, which stopped you from adding cards to your hand, ending the combo. It was an all or nothing deck. If Jeff had a single Neospace connector and opponent had no disruptions, then he won instantly. But if he was forced to go second or his combo was interrupted, then the deck had no way to fight back, and he'd be done for. And this new style of Exodia seemed to even work, as for the first 3 matches Jeff played, he won not just 1, not just 2, but all 3 games. The news spread fast with people realizing that not only was Jeff Leonard doing well, he was playing Exodia. Word even spread to the tournament producers, and that's when they decided Jeff's round 4 match would be featured on a livestream, but his opponent, Justin Singh, commanding the all-powerful tier limits. By this point in the meta, tier limits had been taken to the shed and shot 8 times. 90% of the cards in the archetype had either been limited to 1 or outright banned. It was such a dominant deck that even cards that were remotely associated with it were also banned. To put it in perspective, this was full power tier limits, and then post the February 2023 ban list, this is what they ended up looking like. Even with tier limits being a shell of its former self, the match was still heavily in its favour. The few cards that survived the ban list were strong enough to make it one of the best decks in the meta, but the deck's once impenetrable armour now had a crack. It was far more prone to breaking. By this point, Jeff had once again become a meme in the community for managing to win with Exodia. A crowd had formed watching the feature table. Everyone knew he was on Exodia, but no one knew how he was pulling it off, and that mystery is what made the duel electric. Game 1 starts in Jeff's favour. He wins the die roll, getting to go first. He opens with Neospace Connector, which special summoned an Aqua Dolphin. Not only did this provide for 2 warriors, meaning that he could summon Isolde and in turn win with Exodia, Aqua Dolphin also had an effect that let him rip a monster from Justin's hand, potentially clearing out hand traps. And so, Jeff starts his combo, but Justin responds with Kelbeck, bouncing Jeff's monster back into the deck. Luckily for Jeff, he has an extender, so he manages to find a new combo line to Exodia. Then piece by piece, he starts assembling it, and when the final card hits his hand, the crowd erupts, rallying behind Jeff as he takes game 1.
Oh! Exodia obliterate! Wow.
In game 1, Jeff got lucky by going first, but in game 2 we saw the true strength of tier elements. Justin fired off his tier element combo unhindered, forming a board of multiple negates. Jeff fought back by dropping 2 Santa Claus, sending a couple of Justin's monsters to the grave.
Crime? Santa Claus has come to town, and it has just tributed off the screen. 2 Santa Clauses have been taken out.
But even that wasn't enough. The remaining monsters were more than enough to stop the Exodia combo, forcing Jeff to concede and tying the match to 1-1, with the final game deciding it all. All eyes were on the table. The last game would decide the winner. With his loss in game 2, Jeff got to go first. He opened with special summoning Junk Forward, and then Neospace Connector, and the crowd erupted.
Special summon Junk Forward, and then we summon out the Connector. We know the Connector gets you there.
Everyone knew that even one Neospace Connector meant you could start the Isolde combo, but this time, Justin was ready.
Okay, this looks like it might be a Herald. It is.
It is Herald, taking out the name. And that takes out the Diviner in hand. Justin down to 3 cards in hand.
He fired off Herald of the Orange Light, which not only negated the Neospace Connector's effect, but also destroyed it. Without it, Jeff was left with a single warrior, so he couldn't reach Isolde, leaving him with no option but to pass.
First turn, some people might overcommit because you just have to see it. Like, you have to see it.
It looked like the match was as good as over. On Justin's turn, tier elements could easily blow past Jeff and win the duel. And yet...
Playing a strategy like this, you are not giving Dark Ruler, Evenly Mad, Feather Dust, or any of those type of cards. Santa Claus, oh my...
Oh no! He's proceeding to set 1 monster face and passing turn! That buys Jeffrey another turn to try again! And he has a...
But fate had other plans, as on Justin's turn after ruminating over his choices, he had nothing. The strongest deck in Yu-Gi-Oh's history had bricked, and Jeff had an opening. Like a heavyweight champion swinging and missing, Jeff was ready to counter with the full might of Exodia. He could only smirk in disbelief, already realizing what was about to happen. For Jeff, this was the final opportunity to make it all come together. It's Jeff's turn, and for him to win a duel, he needs to be able to have 2 warrior monsters on the field. He normal summons his second copy of Neospace Connector, but Justin fires back with Ash Blossom, shutting down its effect. But Jeff's last turn hadn't gone to waste, as with Junk Forward still left over, he had exactly what he needed to summon Isolde. And as Jeff calmly works his way throughout the combo, the more becomes clear. Justin had nothing left in his arsenal. Then it began. The head of Exodia reached his hand.
4 in the fields. I don't know if I necessarily side those.
Oh,
here it is.
With the arrival of the 4th piece, the room erupts chanting.
Oh boy. Another leg. One more piece. The crowd is chanting. One more piece.
And then, with a smile on his face, Jeff reveals the final piece of Exodia.
Got the other arm. And all 5 pieces have been assembled. The legs, the arms, the head. Exodia obliterate.
The duel was over. Jeff had done it again, sealing the match by assembling Exodia for the 2nd time, as the crowd absolutely exploded.
Wow, the crowd goes insane.
With Jeff's victory, he cemented himself in the history of Yu-Gi-Oh! After all, there's few people who can claim they played Exodia in a feature match and won. Sure, he dropped the next 3 rounds and finished 4-3, but that didn't matter, because when people remember that tournament, they remember Jeff. His personality left such a mark that even his opponent, after arguably losing in a pretty uninteractive duel, couldn't help but laugh and smile. And a moment spread far beyond the niche group of competitive Yu-Gi-Oh! Players. Clips of Jeff's Exodia win went viral, reaching even casual fans who hadn't played the game in years, but still remembered Exodia from their childhood. And that's what Jeff's story reminds us. It's not the deck that defines the player, it's the player that defines the deck. If anyone else had been a face of Mystic Mine or an Exodia FTK, the reception would have been far less positive. But because it was Jeff, we loved it. In a world full of egos and competition, we could all learn to be a little more like Jeff. Jeff showed how Exodia would work in real life, but how well did it work in anime? Click on this video on the right to see how well, or not so well, Exodia does in Yugi's deck from the show.